All right, this is Katie Klettlinger. On August 29th, I am interviewing Ronald Lennie Ryan. He goes by the name of Lennie. And first of all, thank you so much for interviewing with us today. We look forward to hearing your story. Lennie, can you tell me where you were born and what date you were born?
April the 8th of 1945. I was born on Holland Street. I was born at home.
You were born at home. Was that in Newark, Ohio?
Yeah, this right over here off of Williams.
So basically, you're just a couple streets away from where you were born, living now.
Basically, yeah, I never thought of it. You're right.
Yeah, have you been in Newark your entire life?
Oh, no. Not, well, the last 48, 49 years here, but all I can remember from childhood is moving. You name it, I lived there. Never finished the whole year in one school.
Do you remember some of the places that you lived specifically?
All right. Hebron, Alexandra, Petoskey, Johnstown, Thorndale, Somerset, DeBoso, Hanover, Newark, back and forth to the Jones home. I was in and out. I would stay probably a couple of years. I was, to my what I was told, and I believe that because I have vague memories. I was there when they had the nursery, so I was really little the first time I went.
So when you were going, so it sounds like you were going in and out of the children's home, and that's when you were going to these different residents across the county.
Yeah.
And how old do you think you were when you first went into the children's home?
I'm going to say, according to the picture, I was probably about, all I remember, you got to remember I was very little, I don't remember, but I remember Mom Zucker, when we had the big reunion, she came over and she says, and I said, you don't remember me? And she says, yes, I do. She said, you were one of my little babies. And one of the reasons a lot of people recognize me, you haven't noticed yet, have you? Everybody knows me as Lennie because they remember the birthmark. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was my, I see guys come out, they're growing now. They're old. We all got old, and you look around and I go, no, it was just, hey, we was in Jones Home. Oh, really? I said, yeah. And I'd always, there for a while, always wondering. Everybody says, well, most of the people I would talk to, they said, well, we remember your birthmark. And they put Lennie with the birthmark. And I always had that thing with the birthmark. So occasionally I would run into one of the guys. I run into Paul Honecker every so often. And I kind of chummed around with the Tucker boys. They were in there. That was Al Tucker and Tom Tucker. And for a little while, me and Tom did all the teenage thing. Well, I say was men. We was, if you want to say 19 and 20, we'd run around back in, and the Burton boys were in there. There was Earl Lord, the Postwaits, they were in there. I don't know if Paul mentioned that, but the Postwaits, all of them were in there, and some of the Spears boys were there. I can remember, let's see, Dolly Jakeaway and her brother Jack Jakeaway. They were brothers and sisters there. And there's probably, before I was going to take us, I kept thinking, what's some of these names? And, you go through, your memory goes back every so often. Especially when I would pass it. I pass it every day. Every day I pass that place. Because I work out at Bethesda Distributing. And I kind of look up, and every once in a while I'd just pull in and I would look and just, see myself there. I can see all the kids playing. I can remember the pool we had. We had this little pool. It wasn't out. It probably wasn't over a foot deep, but we thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And the hardest thing for me is to try to remember the cemetery that was there. And as near as, at that time, all I can remember was back then they had sandstones. They didn't have what we have today. And I always wondered what it was. At that time, I was that little, I didn't realize it. And as time went on, I could see that they were broken and stuff. And I think, I can't remember who was telling me. I think it was Florence Postwaite. She was a little older than I was. And she said, well, that's where people go that get ready for heaven. And that's how way she described it. And it wasn't a very big one. It was, you know, I think, I'm just guessing, maybe 6 tombstones in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a little, kind of a broken down, like wrought iron type fence, if my memory serves me. But I can remember the good times we had I told my wife when you come over, I says, I gotta tell her about I can't remember the other two, but we had a kid there that was named Football.
A kid was named Football.
Paul should have told you. Seriously, his face was flat, but his head came out like this. Yeah, that's why we called him Football, literally. Well, him and 2 other boys, Pop Zucker got a new station wagon. And they went down. They got in it. Found a cigarette lighter. So they commenced pushing it in and burning the seats.
Oh no, that's terrible.
And well, anyway, Bob found out who they were. And the one thing I can remember was they spent 6 months sitting in the playroom every day. We had long benches. I don't know if Paul told you or not about the long benches all around, and the tables were up the middle. Every day they get up and they get the breakfast and stuff, but they had to go back to that bench.
So were they there? How many hours a day do you think they sat on that bench?
Oh, I'm going to guess, because we went to bed around 7. We went to bed off early, but we were up off early. You look at the amount of kids you had, and how many you had to get ready and get dressed. So I'm going to say without a problem, good 8 hours a day, and they had the set right there. The only time they got from that bench was probably to go to the bathroom. And I think, I know it was a good solid 6 months they sat there. And there was another kid we called Donnie Smyers. That's who it was. I didn't like Donnie because Donnie would pee his bed and then crawl over one of our guys' bed and sleep with us with his stinking pajamas on. And Earl Ward, he was one these are the things I can remember about certain kids. Earl Ward, he was always running away. He was always taking off to go see, I think it was his dad was the only one alive at that time. I'm not positive. But every once in a while you knew Earl was going to take off, and they finally catch him, bring him back. And the things I think, some of the things I remember about everybody had a job. I don't know if Paul told you that or not. Everybody had a job. By the time I was 12 years old, I made roughly 15 beds once a week. Took sheets off, everything like that for myself. And we had these quilts we put on, and at that time it was Miss Evans that came in. I don't know if Paul told you that she was there or not.
I can't recall.
Well, Grace Wiley was the barber. Everybody got the same haircut. And the barber shop wasn't very big. I mean, you could probably just say right like this. We'd line up, everybody got the same haircut. Swack, bang, go. But she would come up, and if she didn't like the way the bed was made, you remade it. Mm-hmm. After a while, you learned to get perfect at making those beds because you didn't want to make another one. And that was one of my jobs once a week. Another one of my jobs was when all of us would get up, we'd have these bells. It was a ringer. Okay, we would break up by that. Everybody had to be up. You had a certain amount of time to make your bed, get it ready, get dressed, and line up. And we'd all line, and if the next ringer went, that meant you went downstairs to the playroom. And everybody sat on the benches. Everybody went and sat on the benches. And each one of us go to the bathroom, brush our teeth, comb our hair and everything. Then we'd go back to the bench, and we'd wait for the next ringer. The next ringer was, you went up to the door. You got lined up to go down and have breakfast. And when you heard that one, you'd go down to the dining room, which we called it, and then we'd say grace, and you didn't filly around about eating. Because if you wasn't done when they said, time to get up, and usually it was a ringer. Sometimes they would say, we're done. If you didn't eat everything on your plate, that's your problem. And everything, I kind of remember the ringer. Everything was done by this ringer. When you went back to the playroom, if it was during the time you was going to school, the same thing. When you went back, you got yourself ready. When you heard the ringer, some of us went to Hazelwood School, some of us went to Lincoln. I don't know if Paul told you that or not. The older boys would go to Lincoln School, and anybody under that would go to Hazelwood, and we would all line up, and one of the women would walk us all the way to the school, and then when we got out, we all knew we had to be in one spot in a row, not a crowd, not in the crowd area. You were lined up ready to go this way until she got there. And that's how we did it. And when we got back, we automatically would start our homework. If we had homework, we had to do it. And usually, like I said, about 7 o'clock, we went to bed. And I'm not really positive, but I think it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, you was up. You had to really get up early. Some boys would have, if you was older like I was, when I got to that age, I can remember, we would go to the barn. When you reached a certain age, you ended up doing what they call barn chores. We had milk cows, beef cows. We had a big garden. I don't know if Paul told you that or not. Humongous garden. And I think it's the county that's got it down there next to them. Have you ever seen the old Jones home?
Yes.
Okay. As you're going in, if you look to the left, you see all those buildings down in there.
Yeah, the engineers area and the highway department.
That was the Jones home garden, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And the kids all went down and they weeded it. Up against the bank here, as if you was going down this way, up against the bank, they had what they call an in-ground cellar. That's where they would store some of the vegetables and stuff like that up there. But everybody had a job, and you would mow grass. Back then it was with the push mower. Mm-hmm. And if you was too little to do that, you went out and you weeded by hand. Everybody had a job. Everybody had their jobs. The girls did the laundry. They worked in the kitchen. They did the women's thing. And the boys would do the boys' thing. And I think that helped me through the years, because by the time I was 18, I amazed most people then. I could iron, sew, just about anything I wanted to do.
You're the man all women want.
But I would say, to this day, when I look back and look at some of these guys today, and I go, that wouldn't be bad if these boys in school would take that up, because, it would help. But we could do all these things. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing, the closeness that you kind of got with each other, because all of you came from whatever reason. I mean, whether, like, when I went into I was probably about 9, 10. My mom got in a car wreck. We wasn't in children's home. She got in a car wreck. My dad just couldn't do it.
So you were in the children's home from an early age, I'm understanding, right? And you said you were going in and out. So when you were going in and out, were you going back to your family, or were you going to other homes?
They would take us, if I would take and look at the years, I spent more time in the children's home than I did with my parents. But there would be times I'd be with my parents, and other times it just seemed like it was almost like this children's home was my home. I was just going there for a visit.
Yeah, what were your parents' names, and what did they do? And did you have any brothers and sisters that you were in the home with too?
Oh, yeah.
And what were their names?
Okay, we start with the Dale Ryan. My brother's still alive. He was there. But he was there not as long as the rest of us. And then there was, I'm next. Wait a minute. No, Dale. Linda is one that I met her when I was in my 30s. She got adopted out. Why? I don't know the story on that. Then it was me. Then with my brother Walt. No, it was Mary, then Walt, Ethel, and John. See, I get them confused in age. I know roughly what, when they were, who came first and who came last. And because we were split back and forth, I don't ever remember really growing up with any of them.
So it was sort of like different brothers or sisters were with your parents at certain times, and then they'd come back, and then it was sort of like a...
Sort of, I would say that, because I don't ever remember being around my brother John. Mm-hmm. And I really don't remember being around Walt growing up any, or even then. But there was a lot of... we knew we were brothers and sisters, but we didn't miss each other. Mm-hmm. That's because we didn't, get to know each other. And I knew John, my oldest brother. I knew he was my brother, but to really say, hey, there was a lot of distance between all of us, and we were never really what you call close. I mean, I'd have Walt. He would come around maybe. He'd come around for a while, and then I wouldn't see him for 2 or 3 years. We all lived in driving distance of each other. And I remember with my late wife one day, when we met and everything, she says, we've been, roughly married a year. She came home make a long story short, and she says, I didn't know you had brothers and sisters. And I said, well, I didn't think. I said, well, yeah, but I said, I kind of just said, it's just the way I grew up. I says, I really don't know what that, truthfully, I don't know what that means to have brothers and sisters. When I was in the children's home, I related to the boys and the girls because we were one big family. You understand? We were together. So growing up with child, I wasn't with them. I was always with other kids and them. And they were like the brothers and sisters. I understood that. But it was hard for me to get my real brothers into this picture. But I remember real quickly one day I was going down, we were walking, me and my late wife, like I say, we've been married, I think, and this was a few months later. We were walking down the street, and we was going past the draft house. We always like to walk up around the square. And this dark-haired girl was coming at me. And I just politely looked over and I said, see that dark-haired girl there? And we passed each other. I mean, just like you and I. She goes, yeah, and I says, that's one of my sisters. And she said, you didn't even acknowledge each other. I said, that's the way we came up. And I look back and I wonder about all these other kids. I wish that that'd been a little more, but we had each other to lean on, we beat the crap out of each other, but don't let the outsiders come in, because that's how we were. Mm-hmm. Even if we didn't like this kid with us, he was part of the children's home. We'll beat him up, you don't. That's taboo. It's okay for us to do it. And, I did want to share with you that the first movie downtown that I ever went to see, and I know that the theater invited us all. The whole children's home went down there that night. And we got to sit up in this big balcony. The movie was Old Yeller. It was the first movie I had ever seen in a theater.
Do you remember how old you were?
Oh, God. I was under 12, that's all I tell you. I was under that. But that was the greatest thing that ever happened. We even got popcorn. We thought that was great. But we had a kid there that was named Fred Watson. I remember he got me in trouble when we got in the theater. And I hate to say this, but I will. I never forgot that. And years later, I ran into him, and he was a redheaded boy. And I held that grudge. And I hate to say it, but I punched him right in the mouth because he got me. Yeah, I had detention for a month. And what it was, I was just talking to this girl, but I didn't know he had a crush on her, so he got me in trouble.
So when you say you were in detention for a month, what happened to you?
I wasn't ready. I wasn't allowed to go out and play with the other kids. I was grounded to the playroom. Not necessarily, well, they find you chores and stuff like that, but you wasn't allowed to go out and have that activity like the rest of the kids. And I do remember that the church that they always took us to was down on, see, this would be 6th Street. It was a church, at that time it was the Church of God. If you wasn't Catholic, okay, and they didn't know, if you know, that wasn't clearly made, you went to Church of God. And you went there every Sunday. And the thing we looked forward to the most was when we got out of church, we got chocolate milk and 2 cookies. I mean, that was big. And Christmas time, it was you got 1 present. And I forgot to tell you. Paul didn't tell you this one. I was in on it. We had a candy store there. Okay, it wasn't very big, and you'd have money on the books, and it wasn't much. But I learned down through the years through Al Tucker, and I wish Al was still alive today, because he had more knowledge. He always went and visited Mrs. Zucker. Al was up probably 60. He never missed going up and getting her birthday, his anniversary at the children's home. He went up there and constantly seen this woman.
So so basically it sounds like a lot of the kids kept relationships with the Zergers after you left the home.
Oh yeah.
What was your relationship with the Zergers? How did you perceive them?
You mean, how did they come on to us? Well,
like what were your feelings about them after you left?
He's like a seeker.
I think that Mrs. Zucker was the closest that I ever came to having a mother. And Pop, I don't know how to take him. Pop had a bad leg. I don't know if Paul told you that. He had just a limp. He couldn't really run. And once in a while he'd get mad at one of the spaces of the girls. Boys just knew to stop and take their beating. But the girls didn't. And they would just run that poor man to death because they knew he couldn't catch him. They knew it. He could get, but Pop, I like Pop. I mean, Pop, the one thing about Pop Zucker was he loved a good worker. And I remember one time I wasn't old enough to go scout camp. And everybody went up to Sandusky or somewhere up in there. The scout troop was going up there. Will Becky, at that time, he was supposed to be the postmaster. He was our scout leader. And he'd come to the children's home, and we'd all, have our meeting and everything. And I remember one day Pop come out, and he said, "You do a good job on this." He says, "You're going to go up the scout troop." Well, he says, I wasn't going to say, but the next day, a couple days later, they was having a meeting, and I never got to go because I wasn't old enough to be a scout. And I went down, and Wilbeck, he looked at me and he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm going to get ready to go scout." He said, "You're not going because," he said, "you're not old enough to be a scout." And I remember walking out, and I was part way up the steps, and Pop come down, because Pop always checked in on me. And he said, "Well, how come you ain't down there?" I said, "Mr. Becky won't let me be a scout." He grabbed me by the arm. I mean, Pop was one of these that drug you down there. He walked in and looked over Will Becky, and he says, "That boy's going. You find him a uniform he can wear. He's going up there with you." And that was the end of it. Pop took care of the boys. I mean, you got your fan beat when you need it. But I'll give you a little secret about Pop. That's the smartest man I ever met. at night in the dorm, kids got that. Pop could be outside that door, right? If one of the boys acted up, he always got him. You know how he did it? Everybody up. We'd all bend over and everybody got it.
Oh boy.
But he got the man he wanted. And generally, what he taught us there, that we had to work as a group. What one does, everybody pays for. One good deed, everybody gets a share in it. And he taught us to work as a group and take care of each other. And that's what he taught us. That was the biggest lesson he taught us. You can't be divided. Regardless, when you're here, you are brothers with each other. And whether, I remember, I was a little bit older, and I was an overseer of these 4 boys. My job wasn't to really wish them or anything like that, but get them ready. Like when I went in, my job was to take care of them, make sure they all got the toothbrush and stuff like that. And that's how they kind of divided the work up. So I was given that job to look over these boys and make sure they understood the rules. They didn't break any of the rules, because I got my butt beat if they did. That's the way it went. I mean, but I remember the lawn socials we had down there. I don't know if Paul told you about that or not. Well, I was little enough that they had these little ponies. Boy, I want to ride the pony. Well, I got on when I was little, but each pony had a name. And when I'd hear I don't know if you remember the song, On Top of Old Smoky. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Well, honey, I always thought it was that pony I was riding, because that was his name, Smokey. I always thought it was the pony I rode. I can remember that, and the ice cream we get. And I can remember the Easter egg hunts. And they'd have those. Back then, I don't know why it is today, but back then, we really, truly were grateful for what little bit we got for Christmas. Today, people look at all these, they want a lot of gifts. But we thought it was the greatest thing in the world if we got one little toy. Santa Claus remembered you. And the Easter Bunny was real.
School bus.
Oh, the little one I got to me that time. Oh, yeah, like this little school bus. And it was my favorite toy. I don't know why I didn't remember that. You can take the top off, and you can move all these little people. That's all it is. You just push it. But I love that school bus. I really love it. And you put the top back on it, and if somebody acted up, you made him get out of that seat and sit up by the driver. That's what you did. That's the games you played.
It sounds like you had a lot of events and a lot of things that you and the other kids were able to do together. Do you remember any groups coming in or anyone else or anything in particular?
The biggest highlight, I know I made it sound like, the biggest highlight was any group activities. Most of the time, you were confined at the children's home. You really didn't know that much about the outside world. We did get to go to the YMCA. But that was later down the road, and I don't know how they worked out, but we was allowed to go down there for an hour. And I hate to put it this way, we had to go down before Saturday dinner, because Saturday was cornbread and beans. And the guy down there says, no more. You're going to have to schedule them before. Because I guess we left an awful strong impression on when
kids will be kids.
So you figure all us kids were going down there, And this might embarrass you, but we thought the greatest thing it was making them bubbles come up through the water. Because yeah, blop, 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 blop. And one up the other said, I can do better than that. And just things like that. But like I said, a lot of things we were taught how to take care of ourselves after we left.
I was going to ask you, what did you do after you left the home, and from what you learned, how did it affect you? How did it shape who you were?
Well, I think they taught me that the world didn't owe me a living. I'd have to get out there and do it. And you wasn't just going to sit around. I hate to say this, but for a lot of young people today, they don't do that. They gave you, I don't know how to really say it, but I think they gave you tools to go out there and work with. You can make a living at anything. Don't be too proud to take this job or that job to get yourself going. And I think one of the first jobs I had, believe it or not, was I worked on a garbage truck, but it was a pickup. The bad part about it is this, he was small time, and we had to stomp in that to get it down in the truck. Then, where I was making the big money, yes sir, I went to Gene Winnison's Car Wash. I worked 7 days a week, okay, and I got a half a penny on every car I washed. And I was guaranteed $7.50 a week if I made it every day, the 7 days. And if you broke a check at back in $22, man, you was in money. Big bucks. I mean, you could go out and do anything you wanted. But you had to work it 7 days a week, no days off. And so that was probably my first, what I call, steady. I worked there for over a year. And then as time went on, I went from there. I went from there to actually Volkswagen, when Volkswagen was big. I went out there and I worked out there for like 3 years. And then I left there and I worked for American Aggregate for 3 years. Then I finally got into line clearance. That's where you see these guys go out and clear all the trees out. I did that for 27 years. So roughly, when I got at about 45, I was too old to do it. You're out of. I wasn't. I just decided that isn't where I wanted to end up at. And I went to work for Matestics Distributing. But before I did that, I actually worked on my own for a little while. And I did pretty good. But I learned a lot of skills through that time. And then Matestics Distributing offered me a job, and I've been there 18 years. And that's probably where I'm going to retire from. But I think I just really don't know how, but they gave you the self-confidence. They didn't, you were always encouraged, always given a pep talk and this and that. And Pop always said, if you got the will, you can get out there and make it. And from what I understand, I kind of look, every once in a while I ask about this person, that person. About most of those kids that were in the children's home, they ended up not doing too bad. A lot of them were, they didn't end up jail and stuff like this. But one of the things I did want to tell you was I can remember Mrs. Zucker called us up to her room. And she told me and my little brother Dale to sit down. And she said, I got something I need to tell you. And she was very stern. I mean, Mrs. Zucker had to be stern. I noticed Mrs. Zucker like this. No, she was really, and she always balled the back of her hair. Mm-hmm. All right? It's always pulled back in the ball. And she was very stern. She said, it saddens me to tell you this, but she says, your mother passed away last night. And Dale looked at me, and I looked at him, and I went, we didn't quite understand, okay, because we never spent enough time. I vaguely remember my mother.
What was your mom's name and what was your father's name? Do you know that?
Yeah. My mother's name was Eva Roberta Hofer before she married my dad. And my dad's name was John Edward Ryan. And through the years, it's kind of bounced in and out of my dad. And I ended up, I told Beth, I think it was last night or the night before, I said, when I really got up in the years, I always thought my dad never showed any feelings. But somehow I knew he loved me. But Dad never held a job. All he wanted to do was go junk cars, metal. He'd go out and just like they do today. But back then it was plentiful. You didn't get as much, but that's what he did. And I can't really say I knew my dad very well. I mean, what I did know of him, I don't think he was, I always put it this way. Dad sort of might as well have just said, well, I had you know, go out and make it on your own. You know, and that's just, my mom was born stoned down. And that, I think they said I was probably close to 7 before I could actually really speak. Because they never talked to each other. She could read your lips. Okay? There was no sign language. You talked to her just like I would do you. And I guess she could really read your lips. And then, so I really didn't know I can vaguely remember my mom very little. And I really don't remember being around my dad in my childhood days. You know, I think I was probably going into manhood before I really got to know my dad. And what I knew of him, he was okay. I mean, he didn't have no past record. He wasn't in and out of jail or nothing like that. It's just that's just the way Dad was. And Dad was fairly educated. I mean, he was. Myself, I never got through the 7th grade. That's as far as I got, because I had to get out and make a living. And that's because when I got out, my dad was going to take us out just for the summer. Okay? And I was 15 years old. And I was determined to make it in the world.
So, it sounds like you left the children's home when you were 15.
Around 15, 16, I was going somewhere in there. I was probably closer to 16. And because I know I had to wait like 3 or 4 months before I could get a working permit.
Do you know what year it was when you left?
60. I'd say right in there. Yeah.
1960?
Yeah. 60 or 61, one of the two. My memory got, when I heard you was doing all this, I was really trying to flick back. And I know somewhere along the line I'm going to remember this and remember that. And it just kind of, oh, I do want to tell you another thing.
You can tell me as many things as you like, and I can come back as many times as you want.
Pop Sugar went up. We had the big children's home had a big attic. Okay? And the kids that were been there years before we did, you heard of knickerbockers. A lot of the kids wore the knickerbockers that came up, and they were made out of wool. You know what I mean? With the high socks.
Yes.
You know, well, he dug those out, and he told all us kids we was going to wear them for a while. It didn't last very long because they itched to death, but we got the opportunity to wear them, and I think we wore them for like a month. For Mom Zucker says, we got too many of these kids breaking out over this over this wool. And
so they were breaking out in rashes from it.
Yeah, because they scratched themselves,
so much.
because they wasn't used to that wool, and we thought it was the greatest thing in the world at the time. But after a while, we didn't want it hot. You talk about being hot, then suckers are hot. You didn't need an oven to cook anything. But Mom, I can tell you this much: between Mom and Pop Zucker, guess who ruled the roost? Mom.
Mom ruled the roost. It was all Mom Zerger, huh?
Yeah, because she would stop a lot of things. If Pop thought this, she said, "No, you're not doing that," and she more or less ran the show. And then Dorothy, I vaguely remember some of the things. She was there, and she'd be in and out around. She would do her parts and stuff like that. But no, Mom Mom Zucker, I think all of us kids knew that if you wanted to get out of trouble with Pop, all you had to do is suck up the Mom Zucker. I started to tell you the candy store.
Yes, we never got to finish that.
Yeah, it's because I get off, I think about different things to get off. Well, some of us decided we'd like to have some candy. Here we go again. I went back to that bench. We robbed them. We broke into the candy store, got all the candy, thought we could hide it in our beds. Everybody was in on that.
Now, where's the candy store at in the children's home?
It was on, it would be on the first, you come down as you came in, it'd be on, no, I think it was, there I'm not too sure, it was either the first floor coming in. I believe it's when you came up the steps and went in. I am a little vague on that. And like I said, we'd all line up. And we was allowed to buy so much, not just go in and we have so much money. You have a dime to spend or a nickel, whatever. Of course, back in, nickel buy you a lot, okay? And we were allowed to buy candy every so often. My memory doesn't serve me how often, but I would imagine that it was probably like once a week. And if you got in a lot of trouble, that privilege was taken away from you. So, but we broke in and we got our butts beat. And then we had to sit on the bench.
So did he find all the candy in your bed?
Yeah, we thought we were smart. We could hide it in the bed, but it didn't work. We lifted the mattress up and we shoving it underneath there. But I don't know if somebody squealed on us or what, but anyway, we got caught with the candy. But we stole all that candy. We actually broke in and got it. I mean, we didn't have nowhere else to take it. And there was another thing. I'm sworn to secrecy. I can't tell you any of the boys' names.
That's fine.
But they used to have a nice watermelon place down back in the East End days. It was a little more open down there. And there was actually where Metestic is now, there was a farm there. On the other side, he grew some of the best watermelons you ever do. We would literally sneak out and go steal watermelons.
How many of you were there?
Usually there was about 10, because we could carry 2 and share it with the other guy.
Now, were you sneaking out during the night or during the day?
At night.
Oh, so how did you do that?
Well, it wasn't too hard. I mean, you pretty much channel in what them old girls were going to do. Because we had older women that I can remember they were old enough they had to use canes to get around. I'd say some of these women were probably at least past 60 and all this. But we knew how to do it, and the other guys would cover us. And sometimes you knew the bed check, you knew the routine. They wasn't going to come in, flip that light on, do a survey. Okay? Well, some of the kids would actually lay down in the bed like this and look like their head was on a pillow. Now, what do you think we use for bodies? Their pillows. All you had to do is make it lumpy. Mm-hmm. And they was only viewing it. They just going like this, and we all knew this. We had so much time to get down there and so much time to get back. And then we had to find a way to get rid of all the evidence.
Yeah, what'd you do with the watermelons?
We ate it.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the rind, sorry.
Oh, we always make sure it went down by the hog pen. You want to check that hog out? Go right ahead. It's your privilege. But another thing I remember, I don't know if Paul told you this or not, but we would have chicken. I mean, we had our own chickens. And we'd pluck them. Yeah. We had this big long pole. Pop, sugar said, go get a chicken. All of us kids just that was a delight to chase them chickens and catch them. We'd wrestle them, get a hold of them, bring them over. He said, put the head right between that nail. They have nails about like this. He'd take that chicken, put his head in there, and stretch and Pop come along and go, choppity, 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 choppity. Cut their heads off and we throw them in these big wooden barrels. They were wooden barrels at the time, hot water. Well, we let them flop around until they finally killed over, and then we throw them in there, and then we pluck all these chickens. We thought that was one of the greatest things we could ever do. We couldn't wait to get them chickens. Yeah, so that was part of our thing.
Is it because you knew it was going to be dinner later?
Oh yeah, we didn't care. I remember Pop Zucker said, when you were little, you just couldn't catch it. He looked over at me one day, he says, "You eat dead chickens." I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Do you eat them alive?" And I went, "No." He said, "Then you eat dead chickens, don't you?" I go, "Yeah." But we had I beg on that, but we had a Santa Claus sled down there. Did he ever tell you about that?
I don't recall. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
we had a sled down there. And I don't remember, I think it was like, it looked like Santa Claus's sled. It was red and everything. And but I honestly can't remember what they pulled it with. It had to have been horses. It had to be. And it stayed down there for the longest time. I mean, myself personally, I don't remember ever seeing it out. But I remember some of the older guys that was, that was a lot older than I would say they remember when they took that sled and like Santa Claus would get in it. And I don't know whether they used that for whatever. But I always remember that big red sled that sat in there with the rails, the whole 9 yards. And I told you about Pop's car.
You said that you still see people from time to time at the children's home. Have
Once
you
in a
had
blue moon.
friendships with anybody since, or is it just sort of a see on the street, hey, how you doing?
Oh, yes and no. I mean, through the years back we used to, but now, when I look now, I kind of wonder where a lot of these people are that I was in the children's home with. And I think the one I always wondered about most with the boy that was all burnt. I don't know if Paul told you about him or not. He was burnt very severely. And I wish to God I could remember his name, but he was just, his entire body was, it just looked like somebody just pulled the flesh off of him.
Now, this was after he was in a children's home, right?
No, while he was in the children's home.
While he was in the children's home.
Yeah, he had big scabs. He
got burned while he was in the children's home.
He had a little bit of hair here where I don't know what, somebody, he got burnt really bad.
Was it before he came into the home, or was it while he was in the home?
What? No, it's when he came in the home. He was really little when they brought him in. I don't know the whole story on this thing. I always meant to ask Paul if he knew any history on him, but he was all burnt. I mean, part of his nose was, where it had burnt. But he was how his skin was just like, you pull this off and it was just raw. I mean, there was nothing out. His face was that way. He was burned over from the tip of his toes right up to his head. He couldn't grow hair in the places that, his neck, everything. And I remember when I first met him, he was a little bit older than I was. It kind of bothered me, But after a while, you didn't see it. Mm-hmm. You got used to it, but there wasn't one inch of his body. And I always wonder whatever happened to him. Somebody told me that people who get burnt like that won't live very long. And I seen him one time and I didn't realize, and I've always been sorry, but I didn't realize it was him because by this time he was in manhood.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, and now I remember Tom Tucker told me. He said, well, that's, like I said, I can't remember his name now. Tom said, well, that's who was in the children's home with us. I said, you're kidding. Because when I seen this guy, I could just see his head. He was fully.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to get with Paul and ask him what the real story on him, even if Paul knew it. But like I say, we had I don't know what I told you, the Spears boys were in there, some of them were in there. All the post weights. The post weights, okay, the postal weight boys, mother and my mother were sisters. Yeah.
So you were cousins.
Yeah. But at the time I didn't know that. I didn't even have a slightest clue when we went in that was related. I hate to say this, but I can almost say on the Hofer side, my mom's side, I could see the dysfunction family there, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards was there. I mean, I won't even get into it, but I take my word on it. I could understand part of why I was always in the children's home. And do I regret? The only thing I regretted was that maybe that I should have stayed there a little bit longer. I think that's my only regret.
So it sounds like it was a place that you thought was a good place to be.
Yeah, most of the time. I remember one time, I told Beverly I wouldn't say this, so you might as well get a little bit of the dark side too, honey.
That's up to you.
But it wasn't all cream and roses like some people say.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember the times that the older women that overseed us, if you really got out of the way, I was stood up against the shower wall several times. Started at my ankle, up to the back of my neck with a cane, beating me. And I actually witnessed some kids that they would hit, just take the cane and crack them. If they went down, they'd just keep slamming them. Now, I'm not saying you see it in a movie scene, but they was whacking you with that cane. So there's some dark sides to anything, okay? But I know, I remember one time, Mom Zucker walked in, and it only lasted, she caught one of the women doing it. There was no talking. She just pointed at the door. See, a lot of the kids would not, some of the kids, I wouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And it would, in some ways you thought that was the punishment. This is what you, at that age you, but I can't say that I didn't serve mine, but I don't think it should have been done that way. As I got older, it kind of, as I got older, I didn't think anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back now, I say, if I see, I think any kid should be corrected, but that's definitely not the way to go about it. But you got to remember that was them, and that's the way the times were. And I know for a long time that I couldn't handle a woman even getting temperamental with me, because I went back to that and I said, now I'm a man, you don't do this. But I'm not saying, I was probably more fortunate, even though I was always in trouble. I was always in trouble. Over some kids, if they was disliked, no matter, even, some of them never really did what I did. You understand where I'm coming from? Is I sort of deserved mine, but sometimes they would just do things like that, and it was just like, I don't like the looks of this kid. I don't like, and that, to me, that was a no-no. Not just to do that. So there's some dark sides to everything. I can honestly say I never seen Pop Zucker do it, or Mom Zucker. I just do know the one time, and I think that went taboo because it never happened after that. But it went on for a couple of years. I'm not saying all the time, but I know when Mom, there was no word spoken between this woman and Mom. She just pointed. And believe me, that's the last time we seen that woman. And I know she went over and she picked up the boy that the lady was hitting. and they went out. I think he spent the night up there. I'm not too sure, because he wasn't in, when we all got ready to go to bed. He wasn't there, so I don't know what was going on there. And I know Paul looks at all the good sides of the Jones home. That was Paul's whole life. I mean, I think Paul was in there from the time he was little all the way out. So, but I kind of look back and Marion Downs was there too. See, her name's popping there. He was there. There was a good times and there was bad times. But the thing is, you even though you didn't, I think the one thing that bothered me the most was being confined. You know, you felt like, is all, at that time, is this it? Is this what my life's going to be about? Just this piece of ground here. And I hate to say it, but at the time when I was like that, I felt in a way that I was in prison. And I'll tell you what made me think that. Because they had bars all around the windows, and I didn't know at the time that was for our safety, so we wouldn't fall out on the second floors and stuff like that. But when you kind of go to bed and kind of looking like this, you think, and when you get older, you say, well, I was sort of like in a prison, but you wasn't in prison. You understand what I'm saying? But when you're little going into something like that, that's how you visualize it. There was good times and there was bad times there. And like I say, I always wonder where the rest of these, some of these kids, how they did, where they went. But like I say, back when I was younger, we would run into each other. As time went on, it just got distance. I'll be honest with you, I seen Earl Lord, I see him once in a blue moon. I see Paul, and of course, I really didn't even see the post weights that much. I mean, but I always wonder what happened to everybody that left there. I don't know if I've been any kind of real help to you on this, but you know, like I said, there's probably other things I'll probably will remember.
Yeah.
If I do, I'll give you a call and tell you.
No, that's great. No, you shared an important piece of your life and, you know, let us hear your story. And I thank you so much for that. And, you know, as I said before, if you want to schedule another interview, we can always do that. So, Lennie, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. And we really appreciated hearing everything you had to say. well,
I hope I contributed something to that. Like I say, maybe if I get with Paul, we'll rattle each other's chain, remember some things. And Paul said several things that
together would be cool with two people to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we always have those options too, and you know, it's not like we couldn't bring people from the same time era together that we've interviewed. So actually, I think that's a really great idea. If you guys are interested in that, and that's something people are comfortable with, maybe that's something we'll look into.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, again, Lennie, thank you so much, and we really appreciate your time today.
But I really would like to put Al Tucker up there, because Al was very devoted to Mom Zucker up until the day he died. And I want to make that specific, because anytime Al was one of the guys that I seen on a regular basis. And there wasn't hardly ever a time he didn't talk about Mrs. Zucker. I mean, I think she was really, in his eyes, that was his mother. And Al was a good guy. So I think that's, right now I can't think of anything else.